Family life isn't always easy, especially when it comes to living with older relatives. For 5 long years, the mother-in-law lived under the same roof as her son and his wife. She didn't help with expenses and carefully saved her pension. No one guessed that she was secretly using that money to buy an apartment, not for the people who cared for her all those years, but for someone else. Hello, dear listeners. Welcome to my channel. Here's a new, interesting story for you. I hope you enjoy it. Feodosia Arkadyevna Drozdova stood in the middle of the large living room, listening to the old clock ticking on the fireplace. 40 years ago, that sound felt warm and comforting. Now, in the quiet rooms of the Treshkino apartment in Tverskaya, each tick just reminded her how lonely it was. Her husband, Mikhail Petrovich, had passed away 3 months ago. It happened suddenly. He was watching the news in his favorite chair at night and didn't wake up in the morning. The doctors said he didn't suffer. Feodosia was thankful for that, but the emptiness in the house grew heavier every day. The 80-square-meter apartment in the center of Moscow now felt like a museum. She walked from room to room, fixing tablecloths, moving around photos, and dusting the same spots 3 times a day, just to keep busy. In the first few weeks after the funeral, the children visited often. Maxim and his wife Yana came almost every evening. Alina came on weekends. Even Roman visited, more than usual. Feodosia felt touched by their attention. She cooked dinner, set the table, and was happy the house was full of voices again. But over time, the conversations began to feel different. "Mom, have you thought about moving to a smaller apartment?" Yana asked one day, about a month and a half after the funeral. They were sitting in the kitchen, drinking tea and eating store-bought cake. "You probably don't feel comfortable living here alone," Yana added. Feodosia didn't understand what she meant at first. She said she was used to these walls. Her whole life with Mikhail had been here. "Of course," Yana said quickly, but her eyes showed disappointment. "I just thought maybe it's hard for you to live alone in such a big place." Maxim backed her up. "Mom, we're just worried about you. It's a big apartment and anything could happen. Also, Yana and I have been thinking we could really use more space. The kids are growing." Their children, 8-year-old Paulina and 6-year-old Artyom, felt cramped in their small 2-bedroom apartment on the edge of the city. Maxim had a good job as a manager in a construction company, but buying an apartment in the city center was far out of reach. "We know it's not the right time to talk about this," Yana said gently, touching her mother-in-law's hand. "But if you ever decide, we'd love to help you find a good place and move." A week later, Alina joined in. She was always more direct than Yana. "Mom, I'm sick of this rental," she said, slumping on the living room couch. "The landlord is crazy. He does repairs in the middle of winter or raises the rent every 6 months. And now he wants to sell the place. We have to move out by summer." Alina was 28 and worked as an economist at a small company. Her salary was enough for a decent 1-bedroom apartment, but not more than that. She'd been saving for 5 years, but Moscow prices kept going up faster than she could save. "I'm not asking you for anything," she said quickly, seeing her mother's face change. "I'm just saying, sometimes I feel like I'll spend my whole life renting someone else's place." Feodosia listened to her children and felt a tightness in her chest. She understood their problems and felt sympathy, but also pressure. It was like they wanted her to make a big decision she wasn't ready for. Roman, unlike his brother and sister, never brought up housing. He came once a week, drank coffee, asked how she was feeling, and offered to help around the house. Sometimes he brought his wife, Kira, a quiet girl who always seemed tense around her mother-in-law. Roman and Kira rented a studio in a residential area. He worked as a programmer from home and, people said, earned more than Maxim. But they lived simply, weren't rushing to have kids, and never talked about needing a bigger place. "He's gotten kind of cold," Feodosia Arkadyevna told her friend Nina Vasilyevna during one of their phone calls. "He comes in, says hi, asks politely how I'm doing, and that's it. He used to tell me about work, about his plans. Now, he just sits there like a stranger." "All men are like that," her friend replied. "They just don't know how to show feelings." At least Maxim and Alina were caring. They came to visit often. Maxim fixed anything that broke in the apartment. Yana, his wife, brought groceries and cooked dinner. Alina helped with documents and took her to the doctor when needed. It was clear they loved their mother and wanted the best for her. But things started to shift in late autumn. One evening, Feodosia was watching a TV show and suddenly realized she hadn't left the house in 3 days. And the truth was, she didn't even want to. Why go out? It was cold and slushy. Crowded. At home it was warm and familiar. But that familiar feeling was also heavy. Mikhail Petrovich's glasses were still on the nightstand. His jacket still hung in the hallway. His razor and cologne were still in the bathroom. She just couldn't bring herself to put them away. But seeing those things every day was getting harder. That evening Maxim called. "Mom, how are you? Yana and I are thinking of coming by tomorrow after work."
"Come," she said.
"I'll make borscht." "No need," he replied. "We won't stay for dinner. We just want to talk." When they arrived, the conversation turned serious. They had clearly prepared. "Mom, we've been thinking about your situation," Maxim said, sitting next to her. "We understand it's hard being alone in a big apartment. We wanted to offer you an idea." Yana pulled out some papers with printed listings. "Look at these apartments," she said. "One is near a park, on the first floor, so no elevator needed. Another is closer to the center, but still in a quiet area." Feodosia looked at the photos. The apartments looked nice, but much smaller than the one she'd lived in for half her life. "You know, Mom," Maxim continued, "if you sold this apartment, you could buy a smaller one and use the rest of the money to live comfortably. Maybe even help us kids a little." "I know it's a big decision."
"Just think about it," he said.
"Or maybe," Yana added, "you could stay with one of us for a while. Try it out, and we'll help you look for the perfect place." "Kalina can't offer that, she rents," Maxim said. "And Roman's place is tiny, just a studio. But you could stay with us. Live with us for now, and we'll help with everything." It sounded logical. Feodosia had always trusted Maxim. He was responsible, married young, raised his kids well, never asked her for money. If he promised help, she believed him. Still, something didn't feel right. "What if I don't want to sell?" she asked carefully. "Mom, it's your choice," Maxim said gently. "But imagine living in a cozy, 2-room apartment with enough money to never worry again. And honestly, we'd feel better if you lived closer to one of us." A week later, Alina came over. She walked around the apartment, touched the furniture, looked at old photos. "Mom," she asked while sitting down, "do you know how much apartments in this area go for?" "No idea," Feodosia answered. "It's a lot," Alina said. "For this kind of place in the center, you could get enough to last the rest of your life. You could buy a nice 2-bedroom apartment and help us get on our feet." She spoke softly but firmly. "I'm not pushing," she added. "Just thinking of your future. What if you get sick? What if you need a nurse or expensive treatment? Your pension won't cover it, but if you sell, you'll have savings." Feodosia listened quietly. And slowly, her feelings toward the apartment began to shift. Just a month ago, it felt like her warm, memory-filled home. Now, it was starting to feel like a burden. Really, why does one person need so much space? It made sense to live in a smaller place and keep some extra money for the future. Feodosia Arkadyevna also thought about her children. Maxim truly deserved better. He was a great husband, a good father, and a caring son. Alina struggled in a rented apartment and dreamed of having her own home. And Roman? Well, Roman had pulled away from the family. He lived his own life, didn't have kids, and didn't really get involved. Feodosia took another month to think about it. She visited Maxim's place a few times and saw how tight it was. Polina and Artyom had to share one small room. Maxim and Yana could only open the sofa bed in the living room after the kids were asleep. One day, Polina asked, "Grandma, when will we live in your big apartment?" That's when Feodosia realized the kids already knew about the plan. In December, she finally made her decision. Maxim helped with all the paperwork. It turned out to be easier than she thought. He handled all the legal stuff. All she had to do was sign the papers at the notary's office. After signing, Maxim hugged her. Mom, you don't know how grateful we are. We'll fix up the apartment, make it beautiful. For now, you'll stay with us and see how it feels. Yana was emotional too. Feodosia Arkadyevna, you're so generous and wise. Not every mother helps her kids like this. They decided not to tell Roman.
First, his place was tiny.
Second, Feodosia wasn't sure how he would react. He was always a bit distant, and bringing him in might cause arguments. It's better to explain everything later, Maxim said. Moving in with them was supposed to be temporary, just a month or two. Maybe 6 months, max. Just until the renovations were done, and they found a good place for Feodosia to buy. But in January, as she packed her things in the big apartment, she noticed she wasn't using suitcases for a short stay. She was putting things in boxes, like she was leaving for good. Maxim and Yana came with the kids to help her move. They walked around the apartment, already planning. This will be the kids' room, Yana said, pointing to Mikhail Petrovich's old office. And here, we'll set up the new living room. Feodosia listened quietly, and suddenly, it hit her. The apartment was no longer hers. She had signed the papers a month ago, but only now did it feel real. This was the home where she lived for 40 years, where her children grew up, where her husband died, and now it belonged to someone else. Mom, are you sad? Maxim asked, noticing her face. No, she said quickly. I'm just a little nervous. It's a new beginning. They loaded her things into the car and drove to the small 2-room apartment on the edge of the city, where all 5 of them would now live together. On the way, Feodosia stared out the window. Life, she thought, is full of surprises. Just a year ago, she was the owner of a big apartment in central Moscow. Now, she was moving into her son's crowded apartment as a guest. But she told herself, Maxim deserves better. He's a good son, a responsible father. And this situation is only temporary. Soon they'd find her a new apartment, and everything would be okay. That's what she believed back in January, while looking out at the snowy Moscow streets. She didn't know then that temporary would turn into many years, that the apartment's renovation would drag on endlessly, and that the hardest part of her journey was still to come. The renovation started right after New Year's. Maxim was excited and full of plans, changing all the wiring, updating plumbing, doing a full European-style makeover. Mom, we can't just do things halfway, he told her, showing her photos of tiles and wallpaper on his phone. This place is in the city center. It should look the part. You'll be so happy to come back to a beautiful, modern home. Feodosia Arkadyevna nodded and tried not to think about how tight things were in the small 2-room apartment. Maxim and Yana gave her the children's room. They themselves slept on a fold-out sofa in the living room. Paulina and Artyom slept on extra mattresses in the same space. At first, it was still manageable. The kids were happy to have their grandma around. Yana cooked family meals. In the evenings, Maxim talked about how the renovation was going. It really felt like this was just a short-term situation that would soon get better. But months passed and the renovation still wasn't done. First, they had to replace all the pipes. Then they found electrical issues that needed approval from the building manager. Maxim explained each delay. He showed receipts, estimates, and blamed unreliable workers. You see, Mom, he said, I can't cut corners. This is our family home. I want it done right. By summer, tensions in the apartment started to build. The kids were restless in the cramped space. Yana was tired from constantly cooking and cleaning for 5 people. And Feodosia Arkadyevna started to feel like a burden. In July, things boiled over. Paulina got sick. She had a fever of 39 degrees Celsius. The doctor said she needed rest. But 4 people were sleeping in the same room as her. Feodosia couldn't sleep all night because of the child's coughing. In the morning, she gently suggested to Yana, maybe Paulina could sleep in my room? There's space for a crib. In your room. Yana repeated, and her tone had a sharpness that hadn't been there before. Feodosia Arkadyevna, this is our apartment. We just don't have the space to separate everyone. The conversation was uncomfortable. Later, Maxim apologized. She didn't mean to sound harsh, he said. She's just tired. We're all struggling. But still, the feeling lingered. By August, Feodosia brought up the idea of renting a small place for herself. Maxim, maybe I should get a tiny apartment for now. It's just too crowded here. What are you talking about, Mom? He said, shocked. That's more money. We're already spending a lot on renovations. Just wait, it'll be done soon. But instead of being finished in September, more problems showed up. A leak from the upstairs neighbors damaged the floors. Then the tiles they had bought for the bathroom turned out to be the wrong size. They had to reorder everything. Mom, I know this is hard, Maxim told her as he hugged her. But it'll be worth it. Just imagine how beautiful it'll be when it's all done. But that beautiful apartment was still only in their plans. In real life, the situation kept getting harder. In the fall, Feodosia decided to stay temporarily with her younger son, Roman. She knew he and his wife, Kira, lived in a small studio, just 25 square meters. But she thought, I can manage there for a month or two. When she asked, Roman didn't say much. He looked at Kira, then said, Of course, Mom. But I'm warning you, it's really tight. That's okay. I'm not picky, Feodosia replied. It's only for a little while. But moving into the studio was a shock. It was just one room connected to a tiny kitchen, a narrow hallway, and a small bathroom. Roman and Kira slept on a fold-out sofa in the middle of the room. They set up a folding bed by the window for Feodosia, separated by a screen. Just temporary, Roman repeated as he helped set it up, until Maxim finishes the renovations. But that renovation still dragged on. Meanwhile, Feodosia was slowly settling into someone else's tiny space. At first, the discomforts were small. There wasn't enough room for her things, so they bought an extra nightstand. There was nowhere to sit in the evenings. Roman worked at the computer. Kira watched TV on the couch. Feodosia ended up sitting on a kitchen chair by the window. Mom, maybe you should go for a walk? Roman would sometimes suggest. The weather was okay at first, there were benches outside. But then October brought rain. And winter came soon after. Feodosia stayed indoors more and more. And slowly, strangely, that little studio apartment started to feel like home. She only spent money on the bare essentials. Her pension of 13,000 rubles came regularly, but it was only used for blood pressure medicine, vitamins, and cheap cosmetics. Everything else, food, cleaning supplies, utilities, was paid by Roman and Kira. Mom, at least help with the groceries, Roman suggested during the first few months. What do I eat? Feodosia Arkadyevna waved it off. You're young, my little bird. You need calories. I can survive on an apple. But this little bird of God had coffee and sandwiches every morning, meat soup for lunch, and porridge with cutlets in the evening. And she had specific food preferences. Dr. Sausage, not the amateur one. 20% sour cream, not 15. Kira, don't forget the cottage cheese, she reminded her daughter-in-law every few days. I need calcium, my bones hurt. Kira bought everything. She tried not to argue, silently did what her mother-in-law asked, cooked for 3, and cleaned after everyone. But the hardest part was the daily routine. Roman worked from home as a programmer. His workday started at 9 a.m. and ended at 6 p.m. He needed peace and quiet. But Feodosia Arkadyevna had her own schedule. At 8 a.m., she turned on the TV and watched the news at full volume. At 10, she called her friend Nina Vasilyevna and talked about neighbor gossip for half an hour. At noon, TV again. The series fatty. Mom, can you turn it down? Roman asked, still focused on his computer. I have a Skype meeting. I can barely hear it, she replied, surprised. You have young ears. You can hear everything. Should I sit with headphones on at my age? Roman tried to compromise. He bought earplugs, but it was uncomfortable working with them. Meanwhile, Feodosia Arkadyevna felt offended by these requests. She thought her son was being disrespectful to an elder. In my time, children respected their elders, she complained to Kira. Now, if the mother gets in the way, she should just be quiet. Kira just nodded. She had learned not to get involved between her husband and his mother. Anything she said could be taken the wrong way. By spring, the atmosphere in the tiny apartment had become tense. Roman often worked late just to avoid being home during the day. Kira had lost weight and was constantly on edge. Several times, Feodosia Arkadyevna found her crying in the kitchen. "What's wrong, dear?" she asked gently. "Oh, I'm just a little tired," Kira said, wiping her tears. "The young get tired easily," her mother-in-law replied with sympathy. "But us older folks are tougher. Don't worry, you'll get used to it." But Kira didn't get used to it. She was 27 years old. She dreamed of having her own family, kids, and a cozy home. Instead, she had become a full-time housekeeper for her elderly mother-in-law, who saw nothing wrong with that. Roman could see that his wife was suffering, but he didn't know what to do. Maxim barely answered his calls and kept saying the renovation wasn't finished. "You know, Roma, I can't bring Mom here while the apartment's still a mess," his older brother explained. "And renting a separate place for her is too expensive."
Just hang in there, okay?
"I'll cover all your expenses once it's done." But no money came. The expenses kept rising. Feodosia Arkadyevna didn't just eat their groceries. She asked for specific dishes, requested fancy foods, and complained about anything cheap. "Roman, this sausage is awful," she said one morning, grimacing. "Buy proper food. Don't be stingy." "Mom, this sausage costs 400 rubles a kilo," he replied, exhausted. "So? Health is more important than money." She also started inviting guests over. Nina Vasilyevna came by for tea twice a week. They'd sit in the kitchen, chatting loudly about the neighbors. "Kira, make us some tea," Feodosia Arkadyevna would say, "and bring out some cookies, something tasty."
Her mother-in-law said.
Kira poured the tea, put out some cookies, and then quietly went to the bathroom to cry. She wanted to shout that this was her home too, that she was tired of being treated like a servant, that she had rights. But she stayed quiet. She knew arguing would only make things worse. Roman tried talking to his mom. He explained that things were hard for them and that their current living situation wasn't permanent. "Mom, can you try looking for your own place to live?" he asked gently in the spring of the second year. "Maybe rent a small apartment? I'll help with the cost." "What apartment?" Feodosia Arkadyevna said angrily. "With what money? My pension is only 13,000, and rent for a one-bedroom is 30. Do you want your mother living on the street?" "No, not the street. I told you I'll help." It's easy to say that. But what if you get married tomorrow or lose your job? "No, my son. Families should stay together. A mother should live with her children." That was the end of that. Roman understood. His mother had no plans to move out. She saw nothing wrong with staying in their tiny apartment. Meanwhile, she kept saving her pension. Every month she got 13,000 rubles and spent only a tiny part of it. The rest went into a special savings account. Once a month, she met with her daughter Alina. They walked around shopping malls, looked at store windows, and visited real estate agencies. "Mom, look at this one bedroom. It's nice. New building, good layout. A little pricey though," Alina said, pointing to a listing. "It's okay," Feodosia replied. "We'll wait. Prices will drop, or I'll save more." She didn't say how much she'd saved, but Alina could tell the money was meant for something important, probably to buy property. "You know, sweetheart," Feodosia told her one day during a walk, "you're the only one who really understands me. Maxim's always busy, Roman's cold. But you're always there." Alina felt special. She was the only one who met her mother regularly, listened to her problems, and showed she cared. "What does Roman say about you living with them?" Alina asked. "What can he say?" her mother answered. "He stays quiet and frowns. And Kira's like a mouse, never says a word." "They're ungrateful, Alina. I gave them an apartment, and now look how they treat me." "What apartment?" Alina asked, confused. Then Feodosia realized she had said too much. Maxim had told her not to say anything until the renovation was done. "Well, I just helped Maxim a little with housing," she said vaguely. "He has a family, he needed it more." Alina didn't ask more questions, but she felt a sting. So Mom helped Maxim, but not her. She was also renting, also struggling, and deserved help too. Mom, will you help me too one day? She asked during their next meeting. Of course, my dear, Feodosia said warmly. You're my only daughter. Right now, all the money is going into fixing Maxim's place, but we'll help you too later. And Alina believed her. She started visiting her mother even more often and listening more patiently. After all, if her mom was saving up to help her kids buy apartments, Alina wanted to make sure she stayed on her good side. Meanwhile, life in the studio apartment was getting worse. Roman worked with headphones, but Feodosia still blasted the TV, saying she had to hear the news. Kira continued buying groceries for all three of them, but her mother-in-law always complained about her choices and demanded more expensive items. I used to eat better when I was young, she grumbled. Now I'm old, and I have to eat cheap junk. Kira stayed silent, but inside she was angry. She knew that for 2 years now, her mother-in-law had been living off them, without even paying for food, and still acted like she was doing them a favor. By the end of the 3rd year living together, Kira started thinking about divorce. She had married for love, not to live with a never-satisfied mother-in-law. But getting a divorce meant she'd have to leave the only home she had, and she couldn't afford rent on her own. It was a trap. To get away from her mother-in-law, she needed money for a new place, but she had no money because it all went to supporting that same mother-in-law. Roman, we can't keep living like this, she told her husband one night while his mother watched a TV show with headphones on. I know. Just hold on a little longer, Roman said. Maxim promised the repairs would be done by summer. But summer passed. Then autumn of the 4th year came, and still nothing changed. Maxim and his family were living happily in their newly fixed apartment downtown. Feodosia Arkadyevna was still living in their tiny studio, supported completely by Roman. Meanwhile, she continued to save her pension every month. Justice was slowly building, but no one saw it coming yet. By the 5th year, Kira was no longer herself. The cheerful, easygoing girl Roman had fallen in love with now looked tired, stressed, and pale. She had dark circles under her eyes and new wrinkles, not from laughter, but from constant stress. She woke up at 7 a.m. every day to prepare breakfast before her mother-in-law got up. Feodosia liked her coffee ready, with sandwiches made from Doktorska bologna. No other kind would do. Kira, why do you wake up so early? Roman asked one morning, seeing her tiptoeing around the kitchen. Just a habit, she said quietly. But it wasn't a habit. It was her only moment of peace. 30 minutes to drink her coffee in silence, without the TV blaring or her mother-in-law asking questions. Feodosia woke up at 8:30 and immediately turned the TV on at full volume, saying her hearing wasn't what it used to be. Roman, could you work a little quieter? She asked while he tried to join a Skype meeting. I'm working, Mom. I have a planning call. And I need to know what's going on in my country. I have the right to be informed. So Roman would take his laptop into the bathroom, sit on the edge of the tub, and try to work from there. His co-workers were always confused by the background, but he never explained why. After the news, Feodosia would call her friend Nina Vasilyevna. Their talks lasted more than half an hour. Gossip, politics, and complaints about young people. Nina, you won't believe it. Yesterday, no one gave me a seat on the bus, she said loudly, right next to Roman. Young people these days are so rude. What happened to respect? Her friend agreed. My grandson doesn't even want to talk to me anymore. Exactly. And my kids think I'm bothering them. Roman's always in a bad mood, and Kira never talks. They're so ungrateful. Roman heard it all and clenched his fists. He wanted to shout, I'm tired because of you. Kira's quiet because she's miserable. But he knew if he said anything, it would just turn into a fight, and he'd be accused of being heartless. At lunch, his mother watched back-to-back soap operas, Swati, Varnans, Interns, all at full blast. She laughed and gave loud commentary. What nonsense, she shouted. Who talks to their husband like that? In our day, women knew their place. Kira, who was cooking dinner in the kitchen, winced. Every word felt like a personal jab. In the evening, after Roman finished work, his mom turned her attention to them. Kira, what's for dinner? Not that pasta again, right? It gives me heartburn. Better fry up some potatoes with meat and make a salad, but no tomatoes, I'm allergic. And can you also make some compote? Store-bought juice is full of chemicals. Kira did everything silently. She'd learned long ago that arguing was pointless. Her mother-in-law would get her way no matter what, and if you resisted, she'd act offended. You know what? Feodosia Arkadyevna continued, settling deeper into her chair. Today I met up with Alenaka. We went to a real estate agency to look at apartments in new buildings. So beautiful. Fully renovated, furnished. All the appliances. Just move in and live. Probably expensive, Roman muttered, eyes still on his laptop. Not really. 3 million for a one-bedroom in a decent neighborhood. They're building good places these days, not like before. Roman quickly did the math. 70,000 salary. 30,000 goes to rent, 20,000 for food for 3, 10,000 for utilities and extras. That leaves 10,000 a month. Even saving all of it, it'd take 25 years to reach 3 million, and housing prices go up faster than savings. Alina says she might be able to get a mortgage soon. Feodosia went on dreamily. She's tired of renting. She wants a place of her own. Kira slammed the frying pan onto the stove. She wanted her own place, too. She was tired of cramped living. But she and Roman couldn't even afford the down payment on a mortgage. All their money went to supporting his mother. Is Maxim done with the renovation? Roman asked. Nope. Still not ready. Something always comes up. You know how it is, quality work takes time. Maxim wants it perfect. Roman knew full well Maxim had been living comfortably in the central apartment with his family for 2 years. His older brother barely returned calls, always claiming he was too busy and promising to talk later. But that later never came. Mom, maybe it's time you moved in with Maxim? Roman asked gently. The renovations have been going on forever. What are you saying, son? Feodosia flailed her arms. It's all dust, dirt, workers everywhere. That's not good for someone my age. Let them finish it first, then I'll move in. But there was no finish. Maxim kept dodging any questions about when the work would be done. The electricians were late, the plumbers were bad, the wrong materials were delivered. It was always something. Kira knew exactly what was going on. Maxim had scored a beautiful central Moscow apartment and now didn't want to deal with his mother. Roman, being the most responsible of the siblings, got stuck with her. And the worst part wasn't even the daily stress. It was that they couldn't plan their own lives. Kira wanted kids. But how could they bring a baby into this? Where would they even put one in a cramped studio with 3 adults? Roman, we need to do something, she said one night when Feodosia was asleep. I can't live like this anymore. What do you want me to do? He asked wearily. Throw Mom out on the street? Of course not. But she's not going anywhere. She's settled in. This is home for her now. We can't just wait forever. I'll try again. I'll have a serious talk with Maxim. But talks with Maxim went nowhere. He was a master of vague answers and empty promises. The 5th year was especially hard. Feodosia had completely taken over the studio. She no longer pretended it was temporary. She bought new clothes, rearranged the furniture to her taste, and started inviting friends over for tea. Kira, bring us those nice cookies, the expensive ones, she said when her friend Nina Vasilyevna came over. Can't have guests with nothing on the table. Kira bought the expensive cookies, made the coffee, set the table, and then locked herself in the bathroom and cried. Meanwhile, money kept quietly piling up in Feodosia Arkadyevna's savings account. Feodosia Arkadyevna got a pension of 13,000 rubles. She spent 3,000 to 4,000 a month on medicine and beauty products, and saved the rest, about 10,000 every month. Over 5 years, she had saved over 600,000 rubles. She started seeing Alina more often. Mother and daughter regularly went to real estate expos, looked at apartment listings, and dreamed of buying something. Mom, when do you think you'll buy? Alina asked one day during a walk. I'm waiting until I've saved enough for a good place, Feodosia answered. I don't want just any apartment. I want something nice. How much do you already have? Quite a bit, Feodosia said vaguely. But prices keep going up. I need to save a little more. Alina didn't push for an exact number, but she could tell her mother had a lot saved. And from the way she talked, it was clear the money wasn't just for Feodosia, it was meant to help Alina too. You remember you promised to help me? Alina asked carefully. Of course I remember, her mother replied. You're my only daughter. How could I forget? I just need a bit more time to save. Then, in October of the 5th year, something happened that changed everything. Kira was doing a deep cleaning of the apartment. Feodosia had gone out to meet Alina, and Roman was at work. It was a rare chance to clean without anyone watching or commenting. While moving her mother-in-law's nightstand to clean behind it, Kira accidentally knocked over a stack of papers. As she picked them up, she noticed bank statements and a property sales agreement. She looked closer. The buyer, Alina Mikhailovna Drozdova. The seller, a property developer. The property, a one-bedroom apartment in a new building in East Moscow. The price, 2,800,000 rubles. The date, last month. Kira's hands began to shake. She read the documents over and over in disbelief. Feodosia had already bought an apartment for her daughter. But where had the money come from? How could a pensioner afford almost 3 million rubles? The answer was awful and obvious, from the money Kira and Roman had spent supporting her for 5 years. Kira sat down on the couch, trying to grasp the betrayal. For 5 years, they thought they were helping a poor, elderly woman. For 5 years, they cut back on themselves to buy her good food and medicine. For 5 years, they put off their own plans, all while she was secretly saving up for her daughter's apartment. That evening, when Roman came home, Kira silently handed him the documents. He looked at them for a long time, then finally asked, "When did you find this?" "This morning, while cleaning, by accident." 2.8 million, Roman said slowly. She saved almost 3 million rubles in 5 years, while living off us, and used it to buy Alina an apartment. Yes, Kira added. The same Alina who complains about rented places and dreams of her own home. They sat there in silence. It was hard to accept that someone so close could lie to them for so long, so calculated and cold. Not only had she lived off them, but she had secretly saved money to give to someone else. To a child who didn't help her at all. Roman, what do we do now? Kira asked. I'm done with her, he said firmly. That same day, Feodosia came home in a great mood. She had spent the day with Alina choosing furniture for the new apartment. She took off her coat and smiled. Kira, can you put the kettle on? She asked. Tired today? Mom, sit down. We need to talk, Roman said, pointing to a chair. Something in his voice made Feodosia pause. What's wrong? Roman silently placed the sales contract on the table. She glanced at it, and her face went pale. Where did you get this? That doesn't matter. What matters is that you've lived off us for 5 years and used that time to save for Alina's apartment. Roman, you don't understand, she started nervously. Alina's alone. She needs help. You and Kira are young and strong, you'll manage. We haven't been able to have kids for 5 years because of this cramped apartment. Roman snapped. We've put our whole life on hold so we could support 3 people on 1 income. And all that time, you were secretly saving millions. Don't shout at your mother. Feodosia Arkadyevna tried to say with anger, but her voice was shaking. Pack your things, Roman said, standing up. Pack. Where am I supposed to go? She asked. I don't know. Maybe to Alina, the one you bought the apartment for. Or to Maxim, the one you gave our family apartment to. But you're not staying here anymore. Feodosia Arkadyevna tried to argue, cried, and begged for pity. But Roman didn't care. He quietly started packing her things into a bag, ignoring her tears and complaints. Roman, I'm your mother, she screamed. You can't throw me out on the street. I can, Roman replied coldly. Just like you could live off us for 5 years and lie to our faces. An hour later, they were driving toward a cheap hostel near Kazanskaya station. Feodosia Arkadyevna sat in the back seat with her bags, crying. Kira looked out the window, feeling a huge weight lift off her shoulders. At the hostel, Roman paid for 1 week and said clearly, You don't have any more money to save. Maxim and his family live in the city apartment now. You're not welcome at our home anymore. If you need help, talk to social services. Roman, please don't leave me, Feodosia begged, grabbing his sleeve. You left us the moment you decided to lie and betray us, he said, then walked away. Justice had finally started. But it was only the beginning. Feodosia spent her first few days in the hostel in complete shock. A small room she shared with a stranger, a dirty hallway bathroom, the stench of smoke and unwashed people, it all felt like a bad dream. Lying on her narrow bunk, she tried calling her children. Maxim didn't pick up. After a few tries, his number was blocked. Alina answered but spoke very little. Alina, sweetheart, please take me away from here, she begged. I can't stay here anymore. Let me stay with you for just a little while. Mom, I only have one room, Alina replied awkwardly. I just moved in, and I'm still renovating. But it's only for a short time. I won't bother you. I'll sit quietly in the corner. Mom, you know it's uncomfortable. And honestly, whatever happened with Roman, it's probably just a misunderstanding. Feodosia gave her own version of the story, saying Roman suddenly exploded and unfairly yelled at her. She didn't mention the apartment contract. Tell you what, Alina finally said, stay where you are for now. Calm down. I'll try to talk to the boys. Maybe something can be worked out. But Alina never talked to them. Her new apartment needed her attention. Furniture, settling in, adjusting to the neighborhood. And if she was honest, she was thankful for the gift from her mother, but didn't want to be responsible for her. Maxim also didn't want to get involved. He had a quiet life in the city apartment, his kids went to a good school, and his wife Yana was happy. He told her, Roman can handle it. He's a grown man.
The week at the hostel went by fast.
The manager, a tired woman in her 50s, told her plainly, if you don't pay, you have to leave by noon. But where should I go? Feodosia asked, panicking. Not my problem, Granny, the woman replied.
If you want to stay, you pay.
If you can't, someone else will take your spot. Feodosia had only 2,000 rubles left, the last bit of her pension after buying Alina's apartment. Another week at the hostel cost 3,000. She tried calling Roman, his number was blocked. Maxim didn't answer. Alina said she'd think about it, but offered no real help. Mom, I just can't take you in, her daughter said on their last call. Work is really stressful right now, and the apartment isn't ready. Maybe try social services? They help elderly people. Feodosia packed her bags and went outside. It was early November. A cold rain was falling. Her bags were heavy, and all the benches near the station were wet. She spent the first night in a 24-hour cafe, buying just a cup of tea and a bun for 100 rubles, trying to make them last the whole night. The security guard looked at the strange woman with bags, but didn't throw her out. He just let it go. In the morning, Feodosia Arkadyevna went to visit her friend, Nina Vasilievna. Nina lived in a tiny 12-square-meter room on the edge of the city, with her granddaughter, who was a student. Fenya, what happened to you? Her friend asked in shock, when she saw her standing at the door with bags. Feodosia told her story, making herself look like a poor victim of heartless children. Nina felt bad for her and offered sympathy, but she couldn't let her stay for long. You see, Fenya, there's no space. Lena sleeps on the couch, and I sleep on the bed. You can stay maybe 2 or 3 days, but no more. 3 days turned into a week, then 2. Nina tried to be patient, but her granddaughter started complaining. Grandma, when is that woman leaving? Lena asked one night, when Feodosia was out. I have a thesis to write, and she's always watching TV or chatting loudly on the phone. Why do I have to put up with this? She has nowhere to go, Nina said. Her children kicked her out. Then she should go to a shelter or talk to her own kids, Lena said. I don't want to suffer because of her. Tension was building, and Feodosia could feel it. She tried reaching out to other friends for a place to stay, but no one was willing to take her in. Everyone had their own problems. Small apartments, families, tough situations. By the end of November, after spending weeks bouncing between friends' places and 24-hour cafes, Feodosia finally went to the government social services. They told her there was space in a public nursing home, but she'd have to fill out paperwork and wait her turn. How long is the wait? She asked. In your case, maybe 2 or 3 months, the worker said. You're considered an emergency, since you have no housing. And where am I supposed to live in the meantime? That's not our job, the worker said with a shrug. Maybe your relatives can help. But her relatives had already backed away. Maxim had changed his number. Alina answered less often and spoke coldly. Roman stayed silent. Feodosia spent the winter in shelters for the homeless, emergency centers for the elderly, and hospital hallways, where kind nurses sometimes let her sleep overnight. In February, she finally got a spot at the Rodnik Municipal Nursing Home, on the outskirts of Moscow. It was a gloomy, Soviet-style building with peeling walls and bare birch trees outside. A bed in a room for 4 people. The administrator told her as they walked down the hallway. You'll get 3 meals a day, medical care, and some scheduled activities. The room was small, with 4 iron beds, 1 shared closet, and a little TV on the wall. 3 elderly women already there greeted her with interest. Where are you from, dear? Asked Raisa Petrovna. What brought you here? Feodosia told her story, again painting herself as a poor, innocent mother abandoned by her children. The women nodded, understanding. They had similar stories. Kids are heartless these days, sighed Raisa. You do everything for them and then they just toss you aside. Same with me, said Valentina. My son went to America and doesn't even write. My daughter tells me, I've got my own life now. Feodosia quickly took on the role of the biggest victim. She told everyone, roommates, nurses, staff, anyone who would listen, how her children had used her and then dumped her. I gave them an apartment in the city center, she'd say. They threw me out and sent me to a nursing home. That's their gratitude. She never mentioned that only one of her 3 children got that apartment. Her version of the story became more dramatic each time. According to her, she had been the perfect mother, sacrificing everything for her kids. And in return, she got betrayal and loneliness. The nursing home staff had heard it all before. Almost all the people in the nursing home felt like they were victims of ungrateful family. But the nurses still felt sorry for Feodosia Arkadyevna. She clearly wasn't used to the hard life in a government facility. Every month, 2,000 rubles were sent to the home for her. Roman sent the money through the administration. He didn't want to speak to his mother, but he felt he had to give at least some support. At least one of my sons has a conscience, Feodosia Arkadyevna would say proudly when the money arrived. It wasn't much, but it was something. She didn't understand that this money wasn't out of love. It was Roman's way of easing his guilt. He knew he'd been harsh, but couldn't forgive her for 5 years of lies. Feodosia lived in the nursing home for 4 years. She never accepted the situation. She always complained about the food, the people, the staff. But her favorite topic was still her cruel children who had abandoned her. Maxim never visited, not once. Alina came only 1 time during the first year. She brought cookies and fruit, but she seemed uncomfortable and left quickly. Roman kept sending money but never visited. Feodosia wrote him letters, begging him to come. He never replied. Her health slowly got worse. First, her blood pressure went up. Then came heart and joint problems. In her last year, she could barely get out of bed. Still, she kept telling everyone the same story about how her children had left her alone. She died quietly in her sleep in March, 9 years after her husband passed. A nurse found her in the morning. Her face looked peaceful, like she was just sleeping. Roman arranged the funeral. He came to the home, collected her things, and called the funeral service. Only he, his wife Kira, and a few elderly residents came to say goodbye. Maxim didn't reply to the death notice. Alina sent a text. Sorry, I can't come. Lied to my boss. After the funeral, Roman and Kira went home quietly to their small 2-bedroom apartment. They had bought it 1 year after kicking out Roman's mother. They got a dog, a golden retriever named Rex, and a year later, their son Ilya was born. Roman had a good job as a programmer. Kira was on maternity leave and enjoyed being a mom. They had their own life now, their own peace, their own happiness. Maxim sold the apartment in the city center 6 months after his mother died. He got more than 20 million rubles, used some to grow his business, and started a construction company. His family moved to a fancier neighborhood. His kids went to private school. He didn't feel guilty. He thought he made the smart and right choice. Alina got married 2 years after her mother died. She sold the apartment her mom gave her, added it to her husband's savings, and they bought a bigger place in a new building. She was thankful to her mom, not for love, but for the money. None of them built a monument for Feodosia. Her grave had just a simple wooden marker. Only Roman visited once a year. He brought flowers, stood there silently for a few minutes, and left. He didn't feel regret or guilt. He believed his mother made her choices. She lied and used him to help the others. And justice was served. Maxim got a business, but lost his mom and brother. Roman got freedom, but lost his family ties. Alina got a good start for her married life, but lost both her mother and her brothers. Feodosia got what she wanted, helping the children she liked most, but paid a price she didn't expect: complete loneliness. Justice has its own logic. It can be cruel, but it makes sense. In the end, everyone got exactly what they deserved.